You ready? Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the open meeting for April 26th. At this time, Clerk Pittman, could you please call the roll? The meeting is now called to order. Clerk Pittman, could you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Noah,
Here.
Councilman Palmer,
Here.
Councilman Ashby,
Here.
Councilwoman Robinette,
Here.
Councilwoman Lipka, is absent, Councilwoman Nelson,
They're coming through the door.
and Mayor Jones.
Here,
And I had a reminder to use the microphones from the audience.
okay. A quorum is present. Okay, the first item we have is discussions regarding boards and commissions. So anything you want to discuss about boards and commission, we could do that right now.
I made notes. You want me to start?
Okay,
Okay, so regarding, so any boards and commissions, so regarding Bill 7229, which is not on the agenda. I don't know if you all have access to that. It's so it was earlier last year, I think we approved this bill. You want to wait on page one?
How do we pull that up? Noah?
Well, if you go to the agenda center, I have mine saved. I can email it. If I want me to.
So go to the website and go to the agenda center.
And it's from, or I can just email it.
Me too, though.
So let me ask this question. What is it you're regarding to that related to 7233?
Oh, nothing, but she said if we had questions regarding boards and commissions, that's why I brought this in.
that's discussions regarding boards and commissions. Okay,
Is that okay?
yeah.
Okay, hold on, I'm almost there.
I don't know, I got pieces of stuff. Oh, you sent something else this evening, Blake, around 5:29?
Yeah, I did. Just
Okay,
kind of a snapshot of the different
okay,
things we've talked about.
okay.
But
Well, if you want to go ahead while I'm pulling this up, I can wait, Linda, because I have to locate the bill to send you all. Yeah, I'm locating it.
Send it to everyone via email. Here we go. Oh.
So 3718 is what you're referring to. Yeah, because once it was adopted, it's no longer the bill, it's actually
Okay.
that ordinance.
Okay.
But here it is on the screen.
So,
I can't read that.
You got 3718.
so letter F
Ooh.
is,
Still, okay, okay.
Can you read it out loud? Because I,
and I don't have it pulled up, but if Octavia, would you scroll down, please?
I wonder if you can make that bigger on your screen using Microsoft Word.
is it you or?
Oh, there it is.
There we go. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, us blind women,
Okay.
we need help.
yeah.
There too.
So
Okay, Section F.
mhm. The ask is that we remove where it says city for a period of 180 days, remove the 180 days. So when people pay their taxes, there shouldn't be a wait period for them to be reinstated onto a board or commission.
Let's read it out. Do you mind if I read it
Yeah,
out loud?
you can read it.
Any sitting member of a board, committee, or commission of the city who is delinquent in real or personal property taxes as of February 28th shall automatically forfeit his or her membership from any board, committee, or commission of the city. Further, such members shall be ineligible from serving on any board, committee, or commission of the city for a period of 180 days from the date of his or her forfeiture or resignation. So you're requesting to remove the 180 days and just let them automatically go back on if they're in
Right.
their term?
Once the clerk confirms that their taxes have been made current. There was also a request, I believe, if you want to speak to that, you can, about the February 28th date.
Yeah, I thought it made sense to actually tie it to the fiscal year when the board terms are. So instead of it being February 28th, we'd make it, I think it's June 30th. And then to her point, it doesn't need to be quite so punitive, right? So what I had suggested was if you paid your taxes within some period of time, 30 or 60 days, then you got back on without reappointment. If you waited longer than 2 months to pay your taxes, then this is just me talking, right? But then, but so basically that's it, right? If you wait too long to pay your taxes, you have to reapply. But if you do your taxes within some period of time, then, you're not actually off the board. So we send a notice letter, we give you 2 months, on June 30th. What do you think about that?
So if you pay your taxes on if you pay your taxes on August 1st, say for instance, you pay your taxes on August 1st, then you have until what time length to be reinstated?
I would say 60 days from after June 30th. So if you pay your taxes on August 1st, you're at 61 days and you would have to ask to be reappointed. But if it's in 60 days, then you're not actually taken off the board. So basically I'm saying we can give people a grace period. And then to your point, instead of making them wait. So the question is, when they pay their taxes, do they automatically come back on the board, even if it's a year down the road? Or after some point, do they have to ask to be put back on the board?
I wouldn't say a year, no.
What time period do you think would be reasonable?
X.
Okay. Heather,
So what happens then, because we do a lot of appointments that aren't on, for the fiscal year, like if somebody drops off or we're just trying to fill a board in general, what happens then? Like at that point, we need to have, their taxes should be paid if we're appointing them.
Correct. Yeah.
If then they go delinquent at whatever time period, then they fall into that grace period, correct?
Yeah, so they'd fall into the grace period. If they haven't paid by the grace period, then they're officially off the council and would have to reapply to go, or off the board and would have to reapply to go back on that board.
okay, Councilwoman Lipka.
So I appreciate what you're saying, Councilman Ashby, but I would like to stick with what Councilwoman Noah said, because these are two different issues.
Okay.
So right now, just the request of taking out the 180 days, I think is what I would like for you to make a motion on, so we can, because I agree with you on that. So let's knock that out and then move on to creating some other time frame.
But you can't get to F unless you go to E, because
What's
F,
E?
E,
Can we see E?
Oh.
Hereafter, the city clerk shall annually review whether any seated members of any board, committee, or commission of the city has any personal or real property taxes that are delinquent to the city. This review shall begin on January 1st of each calendar year. By February 28th of each calendar year, the city clerk shall certify to the city council whether any seated member of any board, committee, or commission of the city has any personal or real property taxes that are delinquent. So let me ask this question. Because my husband does the taxes, I don't. So when are taxes actually due by law?
April 18.
Okay, so we're saying.
Not these.
No, income taxes, April 18.
Right.
Personal property taxes, December 31st.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're giving them till February 28th. From December 31st, basically, to, according to E. Is that correct, Octavia?
I feel like you're asking me, but it's really you all's question.
Right.
So let me ask the council. So my understanding and correct me if I'm wrong, according to E in Bill 7229, we are currently giving people till February 28th to have their taxes paid if they're sitting on a board. If they're currently sitting on a board.
And so I see where you're going, right? Because if we,
I just want to get an answer first. Is
That's
that
what we-
correct?
Right, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So go-
Ashby,
well, and so maybe the answer isn't to change the 28th date, but if we add the grace period, So they'll do a determination on February 28th and send that to the person. And then that person has some period of time to pay the taxes. And if they haven't paid by that period of time, then they get removed from the board.
Councilwoman Robinette.
Heather's fine. So there is a grace period. It's due the 31st and the grace period is till February 28th.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to make a little bit longer grace period. And, and some people pay their property taxes from their, from their tax returns, from their federal tax return refunds. So a little more of a grace period, reflecting that different people have, not everybody has the availability of funds to pay their property taxes on time.
Go ahead.
I would say that right now, the way I interpret this, and this is lawyer help here. We're already giving, there's 31 days in January, correct? And there's 28, so we're looking at what, 31, 28, 58, 59 days. We're giving them 59 days. So, okay, we give them till March 1st. That's 60. And then, but what we're talking about in E is currently seated boards and commission members. Because we need to clarify that too. This is regarding currently seated members. Appointees, that people that we want to appoint have to have their taxes paid, or do we give them 60 days also to have their tax? You guys are shaking your heads. No, I'm just saying, do we give an appointee the same grace period as somebody who's already sitting on there?
No.
Okay, I'm just throwing it out.
And E and F both say for seated, like they're already there. E and F both say seated.
Oh, yeah, it does. Sorry.
Well, at the end of the day, Councilwoman, Noah's point was that the 180-day period is what's problematic. So if we took out the 180 days and essentially just said, you get the notice, they're due on December 31st, you get a notice on February 28th. That's essentially your notice. If you haven't paid by some period of time, then you're off the board. But as soon as you pay, you get back on the board. That's essentially what you're saying, right?
Once the taxes are made current and Octavia verifies, then we should reinstate back onto the board.
We send out letters, let's say December 31st comes and goes and and you go through and you review. What is your process? When would you be sending out a letter, and would they have 30 days from the time you send the letter, or is it just you send the letter anywhere between December 31st and February 28th?
Again, I'm gonna have to refer this back to the council, quite honestly, because this was the first year we did it. I sent out notification, and it really puts the city clerk in like a really awkward position. Because in essence, it's like I'm a bill collector for St. Louis County, sending out multiple letters about their taxes. And then I even got feedback that, I'm too harsh, or, just even the way that I approach them. So it's, because the unfortunate thing is my message to them is, the council recently adopted this ordinance, and, you have to have it done by so-and-so date. If it's not done, then you have to be removed. I don't know a nicer way to say that. And so I did get feedback from that. And then it also puts the burden on, at any given time, we can have upwards of 100 volunteers that, board and commission members. And, I have to check it, on this day, then go back and check it again and check it again and check it again.
Questions I had is how many times?
Just to make sure that, individuals have paid, and once they haven't paid, so really, what do you want this process to look like?
What would you suggest?
I mean, I would honestly suggest that the burden is on that citizen, that, they are required to submit their receipts by a certain date, rather than, the continual checking of, because I did have to go back several times, and, even for some members, you have to go back, and then it's the real estate, it's the, I don't know of a way, there may be a way. But we make mention the state income taxes, but I don't know of a way to check state income taxes. So it's the state and the real estate. Then there's the, also the burden of making sure that it matches, right? So a lot of times it does not match. So there's individuals, if I can't find a record, so it may be one individual that's serving on the board, but when I look up that individual's name, I may not find that individual's name. You know, so it may be that it's in their spouse name or their child or someone else's
Mhm.
name. So then I'm, left with the burden of checking, well, is it the same address? You know, what if the addresses don't match?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of gray there. So, it's really, what do you guys want the process to look like? But I
So-
think if we really want a true picture of, if their taxes are paid, maybe they are required to show, to show proof that the taxes are paid, or a waiver or something to show that they haven't, that they don't have to. Because there is a lot of gray there in terms of if everyone has or has not. And then there are cases where I may, looking at the names, not, because we even had that here recently where, two individuals have the same name, but, it might be, family members, father and son. And so, so now you have to look at, well, is it the address? Because the only thing that I have to go off of is the name and the address.
So you saying putting the burden back on the citizen. So if they want to serve on a board or commission, when they submit the application, they are to bring a copy or waiver of their taxes.
Or, I don't, I don't know. I could just offer this as a suggestion.
So, yeah, so, if you're talking about every year, every person on the board would have to show you their paid tax. I mean, that's kind of on the county record anyway. If we sent out, notification like mid-January that your taxes haven't been paid, then those people can show a waiver or the paid taxes, like put the burden on the people that haven't paid, but don't be, heavy-handed on the people who have paid. So like if you've already paid and you do the lookup and there's 20 people that haven't, send something out to them and then they have to provide proof that they have paid, not you hounding them and being the bill collector. That would,
Okay.
But then that means you still have to look up every person, right? Okay.
But if we have this requirement, we're not gonna be able to get around that. I mean,
Right.
what if we stick to the current, oh, I'm sorry.
You speak it, go ahead.
So what if we stick to the current process? On February 28th, she's made the determination. She sends out the letter to the people that aren't readily, that she hasn't been able to verify. And then it's up to them to give us proof that they have done that. And if they haven't done that by the next fiscal year, which is June 30th, then they're off the board.
I live with that. Okay, Councilwoman Lipka.
I think one of the things that I'm hearing from Octavia is that, we've put this out there and she's gonna do what we've asked her to do, but we are putting a lot on her and there is a lot of people to check and so forth. And we also need her doing other things that quite honestly, I think are more important. I'm gonna make a crazy suggestion here, but I think we go back to, and not go back so much, but we go to when we as council, okay, so we as council members are the liaisons. We are very capable of taking 20 minutes, sitting down, going through the county website, see if these things are paid. And if that became a responsibility as a council liaison on January 1st, we are required to check on the city, the county website if taxes are paid. And we should let our boards know, you don't have to do it in public to embarrass anybody, but you have a connection to your board. So you should be able to reach out to your board member and say, hey, these taxes are due and, need you to get that taken care of. I think and I'm being kind of leisurely here about this, but I'm sure there's a more official way of doing it. But I think what I'm trying to say is this can easily become a responsibility of a council liaison who is overlooking these boards. And we typically have a relationship with the people who are on the boards. So I think it would be something we could say to them and ask them to get it done. And then we turn in the request, we turn in our results to Octavia. And from there, we take the next steps needed.
Councilwoman Nelson.
That's too much. You're doing too much.
Mm-mm.
No, we're not bill collectors either.
Well,
It's not a
Let me
matter.
finish. Let me finish. And the reason I say that, I don't think that we should be able to go in and be checking everybody's information, because when we're engaging with the community and asking people to be on these boards and commissions, or if they're coming to you and asking to be on the boards and commissions, you are reflecting to say, hey, you have to make sure your taxes are paid in order to be on the boards and commissions. Are we not supposed to do that? Say that?
I normally
We are,
do.
yeah.
I normally do, but I'm not gonna search their
No,
taxes.
I'm not doing it.
And I think, the point is, for Octavia, it's like the 80-20 rule. 80% of them are really fast, 20% she's got to search on. And so it would just set the bar that she does the quick search, and if somebody's name doesn't match up, she puts them down as not verified, and she sends them a letter saying, hey, we weren't able to verify they're paid. So that's it. You do the simple search, you send out the letters and start the process. And, because I think, I think Phaedra's right? We shouldn't be doing bill collection either. And, ultimately that is something we want the city to do. So Octavia did the checking. She does a simple checking. She sends out the letter. Then they get the letter and if they have not, then they have to show proof that they're in compliance. And then they've got until June 30th to be in compliance. And if not, they're off the board.
Councilwoman Robinette.
So, Phaedra, if you could clear up, you said you shouldn't be looking at their taxes. I mean, that's like, I could look up your personal property. It's public record.
Yeah, you can look up my personal information, but I don't think that we should be just sitting here looking up people's personal information.
I mean, it's not personal, it's public. It's a public record.
But I think her point was it feels like checking up on somebody.
And I don't-
I mean, I don't. Why would I want to do that? I don't.
That work as it is, that's enough.
And I don't think it's out of line to have Octavia do it. I think the point is we need to do it in such a way that minimizes the impact on her time.
Exactly.
I feel plain and simple, when I'm asking someone to be on the boards and commission, the first thing that I am considering and talking about is taxes being paid. I don't want to waste your time nor mine. So if I'm saying, hey, if you want to be on the boards and commission, we'd love to have you, but if your taxes aren't paid, let's not waste each other's time.
Yeah, I would just do a cursory look so that I wouldn't even have to have that conversation if they weren't paid, or let them know that they had to pay it.
But ultimately it's at a different time, right? We're talking about, and you mentioned yourself, right? It's on the board versus joining the board. And I think we continue to do the vetting up front, however you choose to handle it.
Mhm.
And Octavia still has the statutory requirement to check, right? I think what we're talking about is when it comes time for renewal, how do we minimize the burden on Octavia, so that she's not chasing down 5 family members to figure out which one actually paid.
Right.
Well, and I'm just gonna say this is a meeting where it's a work session, so it's a meeting where we're throwing things out on the table. So don't get argumentative, I'm not trying to stoke fires. I'm just trying to throw out ideas with the thought processes that we're kicking around here. So please take it for what it is.
Okay, yes, Octavia.
So what I'm hearing then is approximately, I know you guys are discussing and maybe throwing out the different dates, but what I can set down as a note is approximately 45 days prior to whatever that deadline is said, if it's changed from February 28th or if it remains February 28th, right? So approximately 45 days prior to the city clerk goes and she checks everyone. Anything that does not automatically pop up is, that's not clear, then a letter just goes out. And then at that point, the burden is on them to come in and to produce.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
I think
So
that's a
I've
workable.
noted that as the process.
Okay.
going forward.
So the 45 days are we still looking at February the 28th or?
Yeah,
Well,
let's,
it's actually 58 or 59 days. Because you have 31 days in December and 28 in February. So if you wanted to make it 60 days and make it a 60-day period, you'd be looking at March 1st.
I think that's in the weed. I mean, that's minor stuff, but I think the main point is that we take out the 180-day punishment. So, you get notice on, February 28th or March 1st.
Okay,
And then at that point, you've got to provide proof that you've paid back to Octavia. If you haven't provided proof by June 30th, then you're off the board.
okay. I can agree with that.
One more time.
So we stick with February 28th. Octavia does the determination, but just a simple determination. She's not chasing down like names. She sends out the letter on October 28th. February 28th. Then the person then to stay on the board has to show proof that they have paid their taxes. They have to do that by June 30th or they're officially off the board.
So basically, they've been on the board for about 6 months without having to pay their taxes.
They're still volunteering their time, which is something for the city.
Okay.
Too long.
Too long.
Too long.
I mean, if they have plates, do they have to get personal property paid? I mean, like,
Yeah.
I know that, people have a lot of comments about that right now, but eh, letting them know that they can't serve on a board because they're, until their taxes are paid. You had started to say 45 days before the date. So were you talking about like mid-January, send the letter out that February?
Yeah, I was saying
Okay.
45 days, because you guys were given a grace period from the December date or
Yeah,
November, December, whatever the date is, right? So you were given a grace period from that, because it may even be December 1, not the 30th. I don't honestly don't know.
It's the 31st.
It is the
December
31st. Okay, so, but I was going by the date that you guys were setting as the deadline of your grace.
So if it's February 28th,
about January the 15th.
Yeah.
Then that's when the check would start, and then we would, anybody that, doesn't clearly pop up or is unpaid, a letter will go to them saying that they have to bring it in and produce it. Otherwise, they'd be removed on whatever. date
February
you guys
28th.
set. So
Yeah.
February 28th.
Well, and so the reason, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So,
Councilwoman Lipka.
thank you, Mayor. So just for clarity,
So it'll be round up in here. So by the 13th or whatever.
so for clarity, if we were to just, write this in stone, we would be saying that the city council and the clerk's responsibility would be to check these people to make sure they're up to date. The ones who are not up to date, we would have a deadline that by January 15th, for instance, you would have those letters out. And then that would give them the opportunity to receive their letter from January 15th to February 28th. That's the time frame that they get to receive their letter and fix the problem. Or are
I
we
think we
giving,
would give them a letter prior to February 1, because if we're looking to remove them February 28th.
that's what I'm trying to get at. Are we
That's
giving
what
them
she's-
enough time to, sorry, what?
that's what she was saying, mid-January.
Right,
is
so if-
45 days.
So mid-January to February 1st is the timeline of mail. That's when it's going in the mail. And then from February 1st to February 28th. So we're really only giving them 28 days to get this up to speed.
Yeah,
Okay.
from the city standpoint, yes.
Okay. Because I was under the impression that we were kind of wanting to give them more time than that. So I mean, we've got, we never talked it out in this manner. So when we put February 28th, that seemed reasonable. But now that we're talking it out in this manner, my concern is, I think, you've got the situation where people are trying to receive their tax refunds to pay these things. That's a very valid point. So do we really need to be giving them 90 days to pay? I mean, I know, that's
But-
3 months. It's still not all the way to June.
To May 1st. And so my point is that the people that aren't paying, in all likelihood, are having some kind of financial difficulty. And, and if they're still contributing time to the city, then maybe that's making them feel good, like they're doing some kind of contribution, and the city's getting something out of it. So, if we said May 1st, that allows everybody to get their tax refund. And then make that the official date. But so what we're saying is that from when they send the letter to whatever the date is, they can just return proof of taxes and they're still on the council, on the board. But if they don't return the proof by whatever the date is, then at that point, they're off the board and they have to reapply.
Okay, Councilwoman Robinette.
I still think that February 28th is a grace period. I mean, we could do it December 31st. February 28th is a grace period. If they don't have it by then, remove them from the board and commission. And when they do pay, then they're eligible to reapply or to whatever. But I hear what you're saying, but like there has to be a line drawn because it is a requirement. I mean, as council people, we're not allowed to do that. There's no grace period. We just can't start opening up grace periods and saying then, well, what if something happened and they need another year? I mean, like, I just, like, you
Slippery
keep,
slope.
yeah, you keep pushing that open. I think giving them the opportunity to reapply after they've paid is what I would recommend.
Councilwoman Lipka.
I'm full of ideas, so just take it for what it's worth and you can kick them all out. Okay, going with what Heather's saying, the grace period's February 28th. So I'm a person, I can't pay my taxes right now because I'm tight, gotta pay my daycare. And February 28th comes and I'm told that I have to step back from that board or commission. I'm no longer allowed to go to the meetings, or I'm no longer allowed to be a voting member. But now my question becomes this to all of you. Do we then have a time period of, like, if you get your taxes paid within 180 days, we'll just put you right back on the board? Do we do something like that? I'm throwing things out.
Councilman Blake moved the date up to May the 1st. That's would be the grace period. Is that not correct?
Yeah, I'm saying if between when you get the notice and May 1st, in that time period, you can just bring in proof and you haven't been removed on the board. So you remain on the board. If after that date, if you haven't brought your proof in by that date, then you're off the board and you would have to reapply. And is that too long?
It's 4 months. We don't get that.
But we're not, but we're elected officials. I mean, and these are people that we need to serve. on the
Right, you're right,
boards
good
too.
point.
We need these people, and I know that it's a rule. I apologize. I know that
Thank
it's a rule, but we need people to serve on the boards and commissions, you know? So while I understand it's a rule and all of that, but these are volunteers. These are everyday people. They're not elected officials.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't hold them to the same standards that we're holding ourselves to.
Councilwoman Robinette.
So, I mean, we're appointing these people to boards and commissions that do the bulk of the heavy lifting in the areas that the board and commission are set out to do, right? Like they are, we try to get some level of expertise and people who understand what that board or commission does. And so to be kind of wishy-washy for that, do we then expect them to follow ordinances, or are we going to get a bunch of ordinance, like everybody's trying to be spongy at that point? And if somebody is like, can't pay their taxes because they have to pay childcare, my guess is, I know, but I'm just saying, my guess is like, that person doesn't have time to be on a board or commission anyway. Like, that's not the volunteering in the city. It's hard to find volunteers anyway. I get it. But the people that we get to volunteer aren't the ones who like, this isn't a huge problem is my point. I mean, how many were there out of whatever? I mean, it's not 50% that we're looking at, or, and the other thing is, if you don't remove them and leave them off, don't hold their position, because then you run the risk of not having quorum.
That's true.
So I think that there should be some strict parameters on how we seat these very important boards and commissions. And, I'm not trying to be heavy-handed. I think this is a very serious thing. Every board and commission is very serious. And if we don't treat it like that, it loses its power.
It's integrity.
Okay. Councilman Ashby.
Yeah, and I understand the point about accountability. But personally, I went through a period of time where I had a really difficult time paying taxes for about 3 years, right? And so that didn't mean I stopped being a good neighbor or helping people or things like that. I still contributed the time. And, I felt better about myself that I wasn't paying taxes, but I was at least doing something for, the people in my community. And so I think we will have people that make contributions and care about the city, and, maybe it's not unexpected. Maybe they're just bad with money. I don't know, but that doesn't mean they're not, doing a contribution to the city. And to your point, right, it's in the statute, so we can't just wave it away. We have to do it somehow. But, more of a grace period, I think, reflects, the economic situations of different kinds of people. Because, personally, I'm old enough, I've got a little money in the bank. I know people that don't have as much money in the bank as I do. Not brag or anything like that. It's just everybody's got different situations. And I know plenty of people that are living from paycheck to paycheck and, and once every 3 months have to put something on their credit card. So that's my point, right? Is I understand we have to do that. And I think that's the point, right? Is if we kick them off the board right away, it's not like we've got a string of people ready to come back on anyway, right? It's not like we've got,
No, not really, because there are some situations that happen in planning and zoning, and that board has completely stopped. And there are projects that are sitting there and people are calling, when is planning and zoning going to meet? My signage, just da, 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 da. So if we had some type of grace period, planning and zoning is a very important board for the city. So if we had some type of grace period, I'm not saying 6 months, 7 months like that. That person know that if they didn't get their taxes paid on February the 28th and they had until April 1st or something of that nature, then they'll be more apt to hurry up and get it done because the board will still need them.
I think I'm on the same page you're walking down too, because I mean, we've thrown out a lot of different dates here and so I'm just gonna say, the compromise that I would look at is, according to the wording, the process starts on January 1st and on February 28th is when Octavia makes the certification to us as council that everybody's up to speed. What I would say is maybe we push that out to March 15th. Just give it about another 15, 25, 20 days somewhere. And I think I'm kind of going down the same road you are. They get their letter, we ask them to pay it by the 28th, or we just negate the 28th and make it a new date. But I guess what we're all trying to say is we want to give people a little more time. Then the question becomes how much more time? And 4 months is too long, 6 months is too long. What if we just went with like another half month or whatever? That would put it out to like March 15th or March 25th or something along those lines. What if we pushed it out and just gave them a little bit more time and compromise in that manner?
Okay. Octavia.
So it was a valid point that at the end of the process, it's not a huge number, right? So maybe about 15 people were impacted totally at the end that, still were not able to come into compliance. So what if it was a matter of, I don't know, going forward, maybe it won't be as many people now that they know. So that's always the case, right? When it's the first year, it's really harsh.
Like the liquor license.
Like
right?
liquor was the same way, right? But maybe is it something that we can do like liquor? When you have those individuals, we bring them. If it's a matter of, maybe the liaison needs to have a conversation. If it's not something that they could correct, then, yeah, if it is something that they can correct and, maybe if they can give us a date, I don't know. I mean, I hate to say it like that and then we just, have an abundance of them. But if it was something that they could correct, then they can say, I can have it done by the end of the month, but I can't do it by that day.
Right.
Then, maybe that's something that we could do like a conditional for, just on a case by case basis, kind of like we do liquor. And if it's something that, maybe the same person continuously has, especially since it's a new process, right?
Right.
And if it's something that is the same person, because, once you're on the board, you can serve for a number of years. You all do have, the discretion to, when it's time for reappointment,
Not to appoint them.
not to reappoint,
Conditional, I think that'll work, as far as I'm concerned.
and so just so I understand, so either February 28th or March 15th, if you haven't made by that point, then you shift from a full member to a conditional member for some period of time. And while you're a conditional member, you have to say you have to say you are planning on paying your taxes. And then, and at some point, so I'm just picking a date, right? We said, April 30th, or sorry, April 30th, right? So if you haven't paid by April 30th, you're no longer conditional, you're off the board altogether. And Heather, I see you twinging over there. We're looking for ways to keep people on the board. Yeah, so that would be it, right? I mean, could they still come to the meeting but not vote?
Because then that doesn't make sense for them.
Right, they don't need to be on the board if they can't vote. Okay,
But then the question is, what is the definition of conditional? I mean, what's the timeline?
okay.
One final point
Okay.
about that, please. I think Octavia, I see where you're getting at, and I think that's a great idea. If you write in there that then you become conditional, then everybody will become conditional. Like,
We'll kick them off the board at some point.
if, right, right, like leave that out of an ordinance. And if
Right.
they're on the case by case basis, like she was talking about, if someone comes and says, I can't pay until the end of the month, then, you know, it's with it,
Conditional.
yeah, we can
We can make them.
authorize that.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Okay,
I hate my fact, my own hands going up, but, okay, so. I got my letter. I can't pay my taxes. Right now. And so my council rep has a conversation with me, you know, I kind of let the council rep know, yeah, I'm kind of in a tight spot right now. And so then council rep, Linda, says to that person, okay, well, why don't you go talk with the city clerk and set up something with her, correct? Am I following so far?
Maybe. I mean, I just was kind of throwing out the suggestion. I didn't
Okay,
really walk off.
so. I'm
I think it
just-
makes
So I
sense,
want to
yeah.
walk through it. So either they can talk to me and tell me what their timeline is, and then I can communicate that to council and city clerk. Or I can say to them, okay, no problem. Why don't you talk to the city clerk? Then my next question is, what if I can't pay that bill particularly, and I keep putting it off and I keep putting it
you
off?
only get one condition.
That's what I'm trying to get
You
at.
only get
So
one.
how, you know, how, if I give you a date, I'm the person, and I say I can't do this, I can pay it by July 1st. Are we gonna let somebody go that long?
No,
All right, so I say I can pay it by March 20th.
that's
on
the
March-
conditional.
But on March 20th, I don't pay it. Now what happens? I'm just, these are things I just want to walk
Right.
through it and kind of get a clarification. So if we're going to write that into the ordinance, we need to write specifically, you know.
No,
Conditional is not written in.
Not
the
written in.
ordinance.
But I'm saying we need to have a process that people understand.
we need a process that council and the city clerk understand.
How do we communicate that to that person then?
They've got to contact Octavia or contact us and say, I intend to pay. Right? If they,
And maybe I do it in the letter, right? When
Right.
The letter goes out. I mean, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, licenses, right? So because we don't want to close people down, we want to encourage them to remain here. So it's kind of, it goes in the letter. If you're unable to do that or whatever, please contact the city.
Yes.
I can't think of the words right now, but
Right,
yeah, you know, it's due by so-and-so day, you know, return the receipt or contact the city clerk, you know, as soon as possible, you know, but yeah.
Yeah.
So we're happy to give you another 30 days, but that's about it. Is that what I'm getting from the rest of you?
I mean, I probably wouldn't put that in the
No.
letter.
No.
But I'm saying amongst the council, you guys are saying like you have no problem with like another 30 days, but you do have a problem with 60, 90, 180 days.
what Octavia is what I'm hearing is that once they get in contact with Octavia and say I cannot meet the February the 28th deadline, she gives them conditional. Is that not correct?
Potentially,
Potential
yeah.
conditional. And March 15th will be that conditional.
right, based off if they still really want to remain on, because some
Right.
of them, you know, some of the members just still haven't paid in this April 26th. So
Right,
if they're still not able, or at this point, they're just, you know, no longer interested or whatever the case may be, you know, it just would be situational. But like I said, to date, it's of the 100 and some odd, it's not that many.
right. That need
That are
conditional.
remaining.
Okay,
Well, and it's pre-qualified people, this is gonna be less and less of an issue.
And so to return to what Noah said, Constable Noah, so are we still taking out the 180-day penalty? So you're off the board, but there's no penalty. Once you pay your taxes, you can get back on the board. Okay.
Fine with that.
We need to make motion.
we need a motion for that, Octavia.
Yes.
Okay,
So, but understand that we're gonna have to go back and get the ordinance and we're gonna have to rewrite the ordinance, but for clarity on what it is that we're putting into the ordinance. Yes.
right, okay.
So are you gonna
Um,
read that back? Octavia, are you gonna read that back? for clear, what we're putting into the ordinance?
I was gonna ask,
Yeah.
Blake,
Is it
Go ahead.
two motions or just?
Just one.
just one, just one. Okay, Blake, take a
Was-
shot at it.
So we're going to remove the 180-day penalty. And we're going to allow the city clerk the discretion to work with board members to ensure they pay their taxes if they haven't. So allow the city clerk the flexibility to work with board members who have not paid by the date, but express an interest in doing so.
If they're not paid by February the 28th and they go speak to the clerk,
Yep.
then she will talk about conditional information for them and give them that conditional date.
Yep.
And that conditional date has to be agreed upon by us.
So when we're looking for the motion, though, I don't think the conditional should be in there. That should
Yep.
be just a policy or, a
Fair enough.
process that we agree on. I would say for the motion, it's just removing that last sentence where further such members shall be ineligible from serving on any board, committee or commission of the city for a period of 180 days from the date of his or her forfeiture or resignation. Just remove that last
Okay.
sentence.
You have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Laquita Noah.
Are you ready to vote? Octavia, could you call the roll? And Ryan is writing it down too.
Councilman Ashby,
Yes.
Councilman
Aye.
Robinette.
Aye.
Mayor Jones,
Aye.
Councilman Lipton,
Aye.
Councilman Nelson. Councilman Nolan,
Aye.
Councilman Palmer.
The motion carries. So that ends that discussion about ordinance 2022-3718. Okay. Councilwoman Lipka.
So going to Bill 7233. I had a couple of things I wanted to throw out or discuss with the council on this bill. Does everybody have a copy of it in front of them?
I'm not sure I brought the right one.
So section A and section D.
Let him
clash.
find the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let him give him time.
We're on 7233 now?
Yeah,
It's on the agenda. Okay.
you don't have yours with you.
I think I have an extra here.
No,
I have an extra one.
Who needs a copy of 7233?
I was going to look at it on my phone.
Thank you.
Oh,
She
perfect.
has it.
Okay, if you go to section A, it says vacancies on any board or commission occasioned by removal, resignations or otherwise shall be reported to the council and filled in a like manner as original appointments, except that if a vacancy is for an unexpired term, the appointment shall be made only for the unexpired portion of the term. Okay, cool, that makes sense. But you go down to D and it says, unless otherwise provided for in this code, appointments to fill expired terms of members to boards, commissions, and committees shall be made during the month of June to be effective July 1st of each year. So I'm a little confused here. To me, those two clash because we don't just do appointments in June. We do appointments year round and we do appointments as needed. So to me, that is a concern and I would just like to point that out. I think it's a conflict and I think we need to go one direction or the other. And I don't think we want to go to making appointments only in June because then we're being neglectful for the rest of the year. So personally, I would like to see us take D out. And if there's a reason to leave it in, I'm just asking because I'd like some clarification. Does anybody have a really good reason it should be there if we've already got A?
No.
Okay, so I'd like to take that out. So I'm moving on to my next one. Section B,
Put a star by.
I got one, yeah. Section B. I'm sorry, B. If a person is reappointed, so this is my question. If it says in here that we're gonna let them have 3 terms, I have no problem with that. And then it goes into, however, notwithstanding the foregoing term limitation, if a willing successor for each such member's position is not presented to the council within 6 months to fill the existing vacancy created upon the expiration of the member's terms, then such member is eligible for consideration for reappointment. So do we let them start all over again for 3 years? Sorry, I can't-
Usually, when a person comes on board, they go to the unexpired term first.
So
If
I'm,
there's an unexpired term, that's where they are pointed to, the unexpired term.
so that's not what this is. And I'm not disregarding it, I'm trying to figure out. So we had this situation, you and I went through this before with FNIP when I was the council rep board. We had people that had filled their terms. They left the board. Nobody filled their term. Nobody stepped up to take their seat on that board. So 6 months later,
They could
I
go
was
back,
able to put them back on.
correct.
Okay, so we put them back on as another fresh term. So that's my question. So if I've got somebody on a board for 6 years or 6 terms, I'm sorry, 3 terms, and then nobody fills their position for 6 months and I put them back on that board, do we start 3 terms all over again?
Yep, because it's successive terms.
Are we then kind of blockading boards and commissions if we've got people on there that long?
Right,
So you guys are saying 6 months, but isn't this saying a year?
I'm at 6, so 6 months.
you,
So if you and I are on a board and you term out and we can't fill your spot. And it takes, and after 6 months, we still haven't filled your spot and you want your spot back, this allows you to be reinstated.
I think that we still, my personal thing is we still should stay with 2 terms instead of 3. Because if a person served the traditional terms like it is now, and they term out and no one fills the seat, then within 6 months, they could come back, that start a 3rd term, but not giving them 3 terms. And then they could step off, stay off for 6 months, then come back, then they start a 4th term. That's like they have a job.
Well, I don't have a problem with 3 terms because we're having a problem filling the boards. The whole first reason for having 3 terms is to keep those boards moving. My question is, I think we need to make a decision. If a seat cannot be filled 6 months after the person is termed out, and we put that person back in, then we need to tell them they fill the seat for 1 more term.
Well, no, the
Or-
way it's written, though, they can start successive terms again.
Exactly. That's my question. Do you really want it that way? Because
What-
that's a really long time to be on a board.
If that happens, we don't need 3 consecutive terms. It can remain traditional as the 2 and they step out. For example, we have one person who has served to 2 consecutive terms. And the board was not filled within 6 months. So they went back to go on again for another term. So that would be the 3rd term.
Mm,
But that,
No, that's
If they termed out,
Yeah.
then they start over.
over. They
Yeah.
can do 2 in
They
a
could
row
do
then.
2 more in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fine. So that we really don't need 3. Go ahead.
So, I mean, the point of a 3rd term, and these are 2-year terms, correct? These are
It all depends
on
the
which,
board.
yeah, okay. So, I mean, I think that, like we said before, we don't have, people lining up or waiting lists of people to be on boards. That would be a whole different conversation. I think when you have 3 terms, what you're building there is a history. You have people who've seen what's happened, because if you just keep rotating new people, you forget what didn't work in the past. It's a lot like council, right? Like if everybody's brand new,
Nothing happened.
nobody knows, what didn't work 6 years ago or something. So I don't think everybody's going to sign up to do, 3 terms, take the year off and then be jumping the gun to do it again. I mean, it's work. I don't see a downside to having 3 terms with the current state of the boards and commissions that we have. I think, we have certain boards. I mean, Alan Miller's like a perfect example, how many architects do we actually have in Ferguson? So, I mean, there are certain key positions that are required for boards and commissions that we may not have a pool of people and it would just sit empty because we can't fill it. So that's just my pitch for, I see no downside to 3 terms. I don't think it would be like a block and taking over. I think it would be a way to kind of preserve the integrity and the movement of the board and commission going forward.
I would just, they don't have to stay though. I mean, we have people that I know on some of my boards, I've had people who said, I've done this enough. I'm turning in my resignation. And
It's
there's
not a
no
requirement.
shame in that. My only reason of bringing this up is because I just wanted to make sure that that was a question we had talked about. So, I got my answer. Yes, it would be a reinstatement from what you said.
They would start over.
Okay, and then the other question I had for section B is that I feel like we need some clarification on some of the boards that cannot share a member. Because we do have in there that they can serve on 2 boards, which is a new thing too, and I have no problem with that either. But we also need to make sure that we have some boards that cannot share members. For instance, city planning or the architectural board should not really be able to be shared memberships with the Board of Adjustments. So I think those are something that those types of scenarios need to be spelled out.
Well, I think Ryan sent out an email or either Apollo suggesting that you don't merge architectural, the planning and the Board of Adjustment. I saw that email somewhere. Okay.
About merging various boards. In the beginning, we talked about merging the architecture review board with the plan commission. We've had a lot of discussions about that. Myself, after talking with people, I would be in favor of not merging the architecture review board with the plan commission, only because the plan commission has a lot of work it does. The ARB has special. The one thing I would suggest is we have a housing board of appeals and a building board of appeals that are pretty underutilized. And one thing we've talked about is option 1 would be merging those responsibilities to the Board of Adjustment. But I think after having more discussions, I'd be in favor of, or at least suggest, is that for some of these more technical areas, whether proper wiring is being used in the house, that we just have that get appealed to the Circuit Court of St. Louis County. We don't have our Board of Adjustment making, hard decisions on whether a building is a fire hazard. I don't think those are things that we want to have the Board of Adjustment decide. We could, but I think we better just have that go straight to court.
Right.
Safety issues.
We had so my concern though is that we're forcing people to go right to court instead of giving them an interim path. And at least if it's here, local citizens, I understand your point that they might not have the expertise, but doesn't that give them a chance to kind of correct the situation? And can't they ultimately go to the courts anyway, even?
I think Board of Adjustment, we said, hey, there's a law set up requirement of 20 feet based on this unique nature of my property line. I can only do 18 feet, give me a variance. That's kind of what normally goes to the Board of Adjustment, is giving hardship exemption for some of the stuff we were talking about, and a lot of it's a lot of the stuff we were talking about sitting to having them have the judicial review would be whether something's a dangerous building, whether this is a proper wiring in a building. And ultimately these are policy decisions that the city council could say, we want to hear this, or we want to send this to the Board of Adjustment, or we just want to say, go to the St. Louis County Circuit Court if you want to have an appeal. But we could, go ahead.
Well, and so you're saying essentially that right now, our board, our, zoning, our housing makes a determination, hey, this is unsafe. And then somebody comes to the appeals board and says it's not unsafe. And then we're asking citizens who might not have the expertise to decide whether or not it is unsafe or not unsafe. And there's a risk that they say, well, no, we think it's safe. Our board, our zoning commissioner was wrong. And then somebody, burns down a house.
Yes, that's kind of where it is. And I think right now, I don't think we even have a forum for some of these boards, like the Housing Board of Appeals, the Building Board of Appeals.
We don't.
And I'm usually a very trustful citizen. I'm not saying we could do it to the Board of Adjustment, or we could find the people to get on these boards. But I think for some of these issues, I think we trust city staff. The fire department says this is a fire hazard, we need to shut this down. I would be more comfortable relying on city staff. If there's an issue, it gets litigated in court. I just think it's a lot of pressure for the Board of Adjustment to make that call. Not saying they're not qualified to do it, but it could be a lot of pressure. Yeah. When traditionally we think the Board of Adjustment is granting a variance from a
Yeah.
a law
20 feet to
requirement.
18 feet.
But really, it's ultimately a question of policy. There's a lot of different ways that the council could set up a procedure.
Okay. Councilwoman Lipka.
So, I mean, we've had these, the Housing Board of Adjustment and the other Building Board of Appeals. I mean, we've had those in place for years and years and years. I mean, it's not been a problem in all those times. So I really don't see it being a new problem now. But my question would be to Councilman Palmer. I mean, what is your experience in these areas with the various things that you do? Because you have more hands-on upfront than I do or anybody else here.
I've only sat before one of those boards one time. The Building Board of Appeals, I believe, or maybe the Board of Adjustment once.
So do you feel like those, I mean, what is your interpretation of this particular situation? Do you think it's something from what you do in our city? Do you think that would be something that would be beneficial to just turn it over to the circuit court?
In reference to this wiring concern, is that something here or is that somewhere else?
Part of it is the electrical code. I don't think, I'm for the city, but I think actually the building code, that would be the deal. I have never seen it come up since I've been here, but I think technically it could go there.
Chief Hampton.
I believe when we do cite someone as saying that this is unsafe, we are presenting the code with it. So it's pretty well explained right there. So even if they do come back to the Board of Adjustments or appeal, I don't see how a citizen can go against the fire code or a code that we have. So I think they should go to the judicial system and let it be fought out there. Because then basically you're just saying staff, you don't know what you're talking about. And then why is staff here?
And so really, we've got three buckets of open issues, right? We've got the number of terms that somebody can serve on a board,
Right.
whether or not they can serve on more than one board. And then the third one is, should we consolidate boards?
That's what I was going through, and I was
Yeah.
gonna make a motion after we discussed.
Would we want to talk about individually or all together or?
We're
Individually.
not, yeah, we're
Okay,
not
okay.
there yet.
Individually.
So it goes back to the question. My question to the council again on section B is, do we want to include in that section that certain boards and commissions cannot share members? This got off the rails, but that's the original question. Do we want to make it clear and specific in this 7233 that members of city planning and or the architecture board cannot also be on Board of Adjustments?
And I thought that was the code already. I thought there was already that limitation.
No, it is not the way we've got it right now. Because it creates a double jeopardy is what I'm reading and understanding.
What boards do we have that are state statute?
The two main boards that are contemplated under state law is the Board of Adjustment and the Plan Commission.
Okay. Well, but the remaining boards are the ones that are put in place by the city.
The Architect Review Board and the Housing Board of Appeals, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think the Zoning Housing Board of Appeals, I think those are somewhat a result of city adopting model ordinances that use those terms. I'm gonna speculate, I guess. But from a state law standpoint, it's really the Plan Commission and the Board of Adjustment. Everything else is really an open question.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Well, the Board of Adjustment and the Planning and Zone Commission, they can't double dip.
I would strongly advise to not have someone.
Right.
On the Plan Commission serve the Board of Adjustment. only because
Exactly.
I'm not aware of a state law requirement that they do that, but it'd be bad idea.
Right.
And so, and Octavia and I talked about this. So most of the boards you can't be on two, but there are a couple of boards where you, and I think you said maybe the library board, you could be on the library and something else.
Yeah, I'd have to do a real quick look to see if it's the library board, but I know it's technology review. It's those
Farmers
that we-
market.
The farmer's market is the most recent ones, but let me try and look real quick to see if it was the library board, but it was only a couple. It's not too many of them. It's only a couple of them that you can actually serve on more than one.
And so that's,
But then when you
Sir?
have,
Go ahead. Sorry.
when you look at like the park board, right? So the park board, or is it the senior board, it should have a member from parks. And so there's a couple of them that do something like that. But there's not too many where you can actually sit on more than one at a time.
Chesky Park is one board that asks for a member from Parks and Recreation. Is that not correct? So that person can serve two boards because they're on the Parks Board and they're on the Chesky Park Board. So that's parks.
Yeah, so Jet Ski Park does ask for a park board member. And I'm looking at the rest of them. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When-
All right, so I have
Fine.
two more questions that are gonna require some conversation. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna stop right here and I'm gonna make some motions so that we can say that we've checked these things off and then go to the following questions.
and I wanted to have a little more conversation about the number of terms. I mean,
Let me just do the one motion first, the one that we all agreed on from the very top. I make a motion to remove section D from 7233.
Second.
It has been properly moving, second to remove D from
Bill 72.
Bill 7233. Are you ready to, are there any questions? Are you ready to vote? I take it, please call the roll.
Councilman Lipka,
Aye.
Councilman Nelson. Councilman Noah,
Aye.
Councilman Palmer.
I believe subsection D is already part of our ordinances. Is that correct?
I believe it is.
It is?
I believe so. So when you were asking about how members are appointed, we do renewals in June to be effective in July. So that is already a part of what we do.
So it's renewed.
fire terms too. I see what you're saying.
Just to clarify this bill only changed two words. Everything else is already codified in our ordinances. It changed the ability to serve on one board at a time to two, and from 2 terms to 3. Everything else is already codified in our ordinances.
And so as I read that, it's-
Clarification.
So, and that would be the expired term. The unexpired terms are the ones that you do throughout the year.
yeah, so this really just talks about a special situation, right? You know, when somebody's term expires, then we appoint them so maybe your point is maybe we don't need to change this because it's such a narrow case anyway.
We wouldn't be amending or abolishing that subsection of the bill. It would be of the ordinances.
So
No,
that,
because we're amending this bill, and please, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but amending this bill is amending what we already have on the books, because you're amending with this bill what we have on the books. So once you remove that, you're not just removing it from this version, you're removing that from what we have on the books,
Assuming 7233 passes.
assuming it passes.
okay. So that being said, and I appreciate the comment, would have liked it a little earlier because then I wouldn't have gone through all this. But that being said, it would make more sense for me to remove the motion from the floor because it's already codified in our ordinance. Am I correct?
That is, yeah. That's already a process. But my
Because what-
understanding is if you're looking to remove it, then we're looking to remove it.
So what Mike is saying is the true understanding of what D and A do are two different things, which I thought they were overlapping. So A is actually coordinating, it's talking about removal resignations throughout, like, I'm sorry, reported to the council, filled in like manner. Okay, so that's going to be things that happen throughout the year. And D is referring to renewals at the time that
To
we
expire
go,
terms.
like you always do, you go through them in June. So they're really two different things. One's dealing with people getting put into terms throughout the year to fill expired terms, correct? That's A.
Yeah, unexpired terms. yeah.
Right. And then D is dealing with that typical yearly renewal
Right.
process.
Okay.
So if that's the case, then my question has been answered and there is no need to remove D. So that being said, I would like to remove my motion from the floor because now there's clarification on what A is accomplishing and what D is accomplishing.
And so is everyone, so we've already taken some votes. So are
Right.
you removing the second? Everyone okay with the
Right.
removal of their vote?
Right. So basically, what I hear Mike is saying is basically we should be working with B and that's it.
B was the only proposed change in Bill 7233, and it was actually two words within B. Otherwise, everything else in this ordinance has already been approved
Okay.
decades ago, probably.
What was the change again, Mike?
The proposed change in Bill 7233 was to allow people to serve on two boards concurrently and to serve 3 successive terms instead of 2.
The only thing that I would like to see added to B on top of what the two changes are is to clarify the boards that they cannot be on concurrently. Because to me, that's important to clarify. Because if we don't clarify it, then somebody down the road can say, well, it never said it in the ordinance. So I think we need to clarify that you can be on two boards concurrently, but the exceptions are. That's something I would add.
People asking to be on two boards? That was one of my
No.
questions.
No.
No, not
Actually, we
really.
do. There are many times that people have asked if they could do two, and when we told them no, they picked one. But if you could tell them yes, you would probably have more participation.
If it's a temporary board that comes up, like technology, do you all meet consistently?
We don't have enough people. Yeah.
Okay, and the farmers board,
Farmers market meets.
okay. However, we have one person on senior citizen and that same person serving on the farmers board. Senior citizen is a board that you have. The farmers board is a board within itself, but it doesn't dictate more from a person.
Correct. There was no conflict of interest in with any other
Right.
board. So that was why it was opened up to allow more than one board for that one.
So Mayor, so like, I wouldn't want to see someone serving on the EDST commission while serving on the planning board. I
They
think that
can't
would
do
be a
that.
conflict. Okay.
That's a big conflict.
Okay,
But
well,
that's the thing we need to
that's what
clarify.
we need to have it clarified. So there won't be a loophole found later on saying, well, that's not indicated, so let's do it.
So can we come to terms with the way it's written? Because, back when DeCarlin was here, I had asked him about putting together a matrix of conflict of interest boards and that never materialized. So I mean, like that'll take some time, and we've already put this off as long as we have. Can we get through this one and then add the exceptions? I don't think we're going to have a rush for people to come join boards that are in conflict until then.
So what you proposing is that the conflict with the boards, we'll work that out as a later date.
And Mayor, what I would suggest is that if we do, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, but I would like to have it put in that a addendum will be followed or following, you know what I'm saying? I want
Yeah,
some
the
kind of
conflict
wording
section,
in there
yeah.
that says that there will be an addendum by certain date to define conflicts, the conflict matrix. I like what you called that or whatever. I'm just saying we need to be very specific.
I'm looking at Brian, you thinking, so, go ahead.
Why is it? What you're talking about, are you asking that to be part of the bill or you just like in general want to?
So what I'm trying to say is tonight, we want to vote on this. And I have no problem voting on this tonight. But I would just like the wording somewhere in there saying that there will be a follow-up matrix that will be part of this, that's a conflict of interest matrix.
Yeah, something like, except, I'm sorry, go ahead. Heather.
I was just gonna say, I don't think it needs to be part of this written here. We can add that separately. It doesn't have to be part of the ordinance itself, but we can add a,
The council decides who gets on the boards. and commissions.
right. Right.
Yes, I guess, I just want to make sure we weren't adding something. to the bill. Yeah, that's all.
But,
Correct.
but could it,
We can have an internal process that looks to see.
Well, then, okay, so what I would say then is, let's go ahead and approve this the way it is.
what,
But then but we asked John, Chief Hampton, and we asked the city to come up with that. And once it's created and presented to council, then we amend this and attach it to it.
What I believe, I'm sorry, if I'm speaking out of turn.
Go ahead.
What I believe what we're saying is we create a list. That list is for you guys here at the table. So when you do go to vote, you can say, no, that's conflict of interest, and it doesn't go
Doesn't have to
into
be
the.
Right.
but I think we need
It
to at
would
least do a
always
cross-reference.
Be on file with the clerk.
But we would almost need a cross-reference, except where the city attorney has determined that there's a conflict of interest. Right? I mean, if we don't put something in there saying there's a limitation, then there is no limitation.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say too.
Yeah.
I don't care how you
To
do
be
it.
an
there just
issue.
needs to be Some reference to the fact that not every single board is up for grabs.
Yes.
Ryan, is that vague enough to say? I mean, like,
Where were you inserted also, since you're reading it, Brian?
I guess it's further. Same time. I guess you could put in a bracket there, essentially saying. Unless city council terms of conflict of interest.
that's perfect.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. And then so
We're down to the 2 terms or 3 terms.
3 terms. What I understood.
So my concern about the 3 terms is that, first of all, 15 years is a long time for somebody.
Okay.
Would it be possible to maybe stick with 2 terms, but instead of making you wait a year, just make you wait 3 months to come back on?
That'll work.
I like the 3 terms because there's what is that phrase that it's a vacuum of knowledge or
Institutional
thank
knowledge.
you. That's what I'm
you're
looking for.
for.
Yes, and there's a lot of these boards that really need that. And that's the only thing that got FNIP out of the water, out of the deep end, was the institutional knowledge and people being able to say, hey, we did this, we did that. And now Mike's on there and they're running full speed ahead. So I've seen it up front. And I think 3 terms is really important.
What if we made it conditional, 2 terms unless the board has open seats, in which case members can serve a 3rd term?
I could live with that one. 2 terms.
Conditional?
Mm-mm,
But,
no,
but I mean, if you've got a full board and people want to participate, I mean, historically, the reasons people have limited terms for boards is to give other citizens the right to participate.
Exactly.
have a full board and somebody's got 3 terms and they're done with their 3rd term, then the seat's open.
Yeah,
That's 15 years though.
Yeah,
It's not 15 years.
well, for
Up
some of it.
For a couple boards. There are some boards that are just a couple of years, it depends on the board and the length of time.
What board is a 5-year term?
The Board of Adjustment. Yeah.
But we're getting rid of that.
No, we're not.
No, that's
We
state mandated. Yeah.
That's the state.
But so if we made it
See that.
conditional,
They were saying you recommend that we send over to circuit court.
I misspoke, it may have been housing board of appeals. and the zoning.
Yeah, those, but
They're very similar names.
yeah, but
And I could have
the
misspoke.
Board of Adjustments.
but
is
but
per
making it
state
conditional,
statute.
it satisfies both things, right? So if it's a high demand board, then people still get, 6 to 10 years. And if it's not a high demand board, then you allow people to serve a 3rd term, that allows you to fill the open seats.
So I would say that if you've got a board that's a 5-year term, and I mean, we don't have a lot of boards that are 5-year terms. Is that the only one?
Yeah, so
Mhm.
plan is 5 years. I mean, plan is 4 years. Board of Adjustment is 5 years. And let's see what ARB is. ARB is 5 years.
Okay.
And the terms are not mandatory. Like you don't have to take a success, you don't have to do 3. Like you can say, my term's up, I'm good. Like I have other things to do, or I'd like to join a different board or whatever.
It's not, you're not
But the question.
chained to it.
Go ahead.
Okay. Mike, you had your hand up.
It was answered.
Okay.
Well, and so my thought is that if we make it conditional, then if there's an open board seat, somebody can take a 3rd term. If it's full, that means that the residents are interested in that board and other people want to participate. And that becomes a way of letting other people get into that. Because, not saying that it's neither here nor there, but, one of the things you hear is, oh, they put their friends on there, they let them on there forever. So if we did 2 terms,
That's what they saying, Blake.
but so you can do a 3rd term if there's open seats, but you can't do a 3rd term if there aren't open seats and people waiting to get on the board.
Right. Councilwoman Lipka.
So I'm going to disagree, and and the reason I'm going to say that if it's a 4-year term or a 5-year term, again, you can put provisional on there. Maybe those particular types of boards that have anything over 2 years doesn't qualify for 3 successive terms. It stays within the 2 terms. But we have a situation where we have other boards that have shorter terms that we can't get filled. We have a situation with CRB. If we had CRB with 3 terms, we would be getting a whole lot more done right now. And I think that the process of 3 terms is designed for the majority of the boards that we're trying to work with and trying to fill. And I totally hear what you're saying, Blake, and I agree with what you're saying on those, but that's not the majority, that's the minority. So when you have a board that has like 4-year term, 5-year terms, then that's separate. You would have to, I would say you put them in a defined amount of terms that they can have. But outside of those particular boards that have the longer terms, the rest of them, I think, should be allowed to have 3 successful full terms because they're year-long positions or they're 2-year-long positions. And those are the things that are important that's what we're trying to accomplish, is keeping those boards active.
Councilman.
Yeah, and so I guess my question is, if we made it conditional, are there any boards right now where somebody couldn't apply for 1 additional term? Are there any boards right now that are full?
No.
That are full.
Mine is.
Yeah.
FNIP, yeah.
Traffic, FSPD,
Yeah, I mean, we have some that are full.
Ferguson Forward,
Board of Adjustment is full.
And that's a 5-year term?
like development
Board of
tax is full.
Adjustment is a 5-year term.
No, it's not. We have one that retired.
One dead.
Retired. We waiting on Dr. Davis to get the new person in, get that person acclimated, and then he's gonna bring them over to the Economic Development Sales Tax Board. Okay.
Hold on. I think personnel was impacted by taxes. I believe so. Hold on, I'm trying to go to it now and see.
Well, what do we said, if the board term is 5 years, it's 2, if it's 3 or less, it's 3.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah. Yeah, I have no problem with that. If it's a 5-year term, it's a 2, whatever you just said.
What happens if it's 4? Do we have any that are 4?
We
If
do
it's-
have-
I know, like.
So it's
Ew.
3 or less, it can be 3 terms. More than 3, it's 2 terms.
Okay, I can live with
I
that.
can live with that too.
Repeat.
If it's 3 or less, they can do 3 terms. If it's more than 3, they can only do 2 terms.
So you're getting about 8 to 10, whatever.
Regardless, and
Yeah.
nobody's getting 15.
And nobody's required to stay. We did not chain them to their board. They can leave if they want to.
Oh, yeah, that's not the challenge, right? It's that other people want to get on and the seats are full.
I don't
Okay,
see
let
that
me
either right
ask
now.
you a question, Octavia. If a person, say for example, if a person said they're on the senior citizen board, but they say, no, I don't want to be on the senior citizen board, and they're in the midst of a term, do they have to wait a year or 6 months before they could go to another board?
It's
They have to
actually
wait
in
1
there.
year.
They have to wait 1 year.
Yeah, it's actually in there.
Yeah, I know.
I thought it was 1 year to get back on that same board.
No, so you can't resign from a term to go to another board. If you resign from your, if you successfully complete the term, then you can transfer to another board. You can, you know, you can request be appointed to another board. But if you resign mid-term, you can't resign and go to another board. You have to wait 1 year.
Uh-huh.
Now, if your term ends, you're termed out, and a successor is not appointed after 6 months, then you can even go back on that board.
So, but we're also saying that you can serve on more than two, except where there's a conflict. So if your senior board member wanted to go to another, or like join another board, we'd
At
have,
any point, now, if this passes,
Yeah,
at any point, if they want
they
to go
could
to
do
another
that.
board,
Yeah.
they can do that. They just, I mean, unless you're gonna change the rule, the way the rule stands right now, you can't resign from senior to go be on.
Right.
parks.
Correct.
But if this passes, you can be on parks and senior.
Right. You just got to go to both meetings now.
All right, so that's,
That's narrowing the opportunities. That's what I see. You know, it's not keeping it open. It's just making it more narrow because you have some people who, just say, for example, you have some people who are people persons and they like what the seniors doing and they like what the Parks and Recreation doing, and they serve in two boards, but that's cutting a citizen out from having an opportunity to be there on the parks or senior citizens.
And that would be a problem if we had citizens lining up to be on these boards, but the whole issue is that we don't. And I'll be very honest with you, and we all know this as a rule. It has always been, since you were a mom at Griffith, 20% of the people do 100% of the work. It's the way it is. And if you've got,
20% of people do 80%.
well, not in my world, they do 100% of the work. But I'm saying the point is, we want all these things. We want more people. I think this council's done a phenomenal job. Mike did a great job, got two brand new people to be on CRB. I mean, we're doing it. We're trying to get more people involved, but it comes down to the fact that in the meanwhile, these boards have to be filled. They have to do their job. And we've got the same people who are willing to help us. And we need to be able to make opportunities for them to help us get this work done as well.
Yes,
So,
Councilwoman.
I mean, in the end, it comes down to it. It's either a mayoral appointment. So I think the most power would be if we had a mayor that was trying to stack, you know, like, and it was mayor appointments. I'm totally
know
not
what you're
saying-
saying.
Yeah.
I know what
So
you're saying.
I think that would be the biggest risk, because then if it's council appointed and somebody said, look, they're just trying to crowd out, you know, there are other people waiting there, then we would have the opportunity to say, then I don't agree with that appointment. So it does come down to this body or the mayoral appointment as the final say. So there is that safety net.
Okay, Councilman Ashby.
well, and, you know, not make everything more, could we make it conditional that a person may serve on a second board if there is an opening on that board and there's no conflict?
They couldn't serve if there wasn't an opening.
Well, that's a good point. But my work, somebody applies for the board and there's an opening, we're going to tell them no. But then somebody else applies down the road and they want to be on the board. I mean, that's the question, right? Is if we actually get to the point where we've got lots of people that want to participate, how do we make sure everybody gets to participate?
Right. That's my thing.
Can we do a sunshine provision to say that it's, you know, 3 or 2 for, you know, you can be on 2 boards, no conflict for the next 3 years, and then it expires and has to be reapproved by council?
They all have to be reapproved by council anyway.
Yeah.
But no, I'm
so
talking about the
once terms
statute.
expire, so we go through and do reappointments every June.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the statute itself. Could we make it so there's a sunshine provision in the statute? After 3 years, it goes back to only 1 board unless there's council vote to say so.
What did you say before was we all agreed to it? If it's more than 4 years.
Yeah, 3 or 3 or less, you can do 3 terms. More than 3, 2 terms.
Okay,
Put that on the floor.
And the Serving on two boards with the addition of his,
This conflict, statement clause in there. Okay,
Is everybody okay with serving on two boards as long as there's that carve out and the no conflicts?
oh, yeah, no conflicts, yeah. But, all right, so I'm gonna put it out
Brian
there.
is going to insert the clause right at no member.
The last sentence of subsection B, if further no person shall serve on more than two boards of commissions at the same time, then I would say comma, unless the council determines there's a conflict of interest, comma, then this goes back to the current language. And no member of the board of commissioners may grant or the board of commissioners during that. term.
Okay. Okay, you like it? You like it, brother? Like,
Yeah, yep.
okay, who's gonna put the motion on the floor?
I think we should let Mike put it on the floor.
Still keeping the 6 months in the 1 year.
Yeah, the 6 months and the 1 year, stay there.
Go ahead.
All right, so we're gonna put it on the floor, make a motion that we accept the changes in section B of Bill 7233 that include allowing three successive terms for any board that is 3 years or more.
3 years or less. 3 years or less.
Or less, correct. Good catch. Any board that is 4 years or more is 2 terms.
5 years.
5 years or more, 2 terms. Also,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
It was more than three.
Yeah.
More than 3, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
because otherwise you're gonna leave out the boards with the 4-year term.
Okay.
Okay, let's
So
start
it was
over.
more than-
Let's start over. All right, so we are accepting Bill, yeah,
The ordinance already caps it at 2 terms. All you need to do is address the 3-year
okay,
appointments. Correct, Mr. Harding? Or, yeah.
So except that the boards with a less 3-year term or less may have a third term.
okay. So the motion is to accept section B with the addition, with the changes and the additional changes to, how did you word it?
Boards with a term of 3 years or less may have 3 successive terms.
What he said. And then also that they can serve on 2 boards, including the changes that are in there by the lawyer. But where are they?
What
It
the
hasn't
3
made-
asterisks he
Yeah.
put.
So they can serve on 2 boards as long as they are not listed on the conflict list. That's the best way I can put it right now.
That's correct, Ryan.
Where those asterisks are, yes,
Mhm.
that's where I had the language of. unless the council determines there's a conflict.
Okay, unless council determines, okay, I got this now. 3 terms for board and commission members, for any board that is 3 years or less. Anything 3 years or more is 2 terms, and they can be on 2 boards unless the boards have been determined to be a conflict of interest by the council.
I think you said 3 years or more, but it should be more than 3 years.
We got it. We got it. You don't have to repeat it.
You got it, Octavia. She has it. Okay. Is there a
Laquita
second?
Noah.
No,
You didn't second it already?
Second, Laquita Noah.
yeah, we don't want to give Linda a chance to mess it up again.
Okay, Octavia, could you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Lip,
Hi.
Councilwoman Noah,
Aye.
Councilman Palmer.
Aye.
Mayor Ashford,
Aye.
Councilman Robinette,
Aye.
Mayor Jones.
Aye. The motion carries.
Did we need to make a motion at all about the payment timeline?
We already did that.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
Okay,
So we have one more thing.
what is one more thing?
Well, we talked about this when I asked you if we should have a special work session about the conversation regarding the road improvements with St. Louis County, the contract, and you said to add it to this work session.
But she didn't add it in there. If we do that, we had to amend the agenda, and we're not gonna amend the agenda.
I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda.
The city manager has something.
Yeah.
It's
We
not
also,
ready yet.
with that, we also said we were going to try to have them at the meeting.
Okay,
and they-
right, I
they-
forgot.
They have not reached back out. So.
Right.
Have we reached out to him?
Yes. ma'am.
Yes. Okay, well, I will say this to the council. I did give you guys a copy of my concerns. I typed it out, handed it to you. So please, please, please look at those because they're very important and I think they're very valid. And that's what I wanted to discuss with all of you.
What you can do, since you created this on your home computer,
Yes,
all you have to do is forward it to your council computer.
oh, I know that, but I printed it off and left it at all your seats at last council meeting. I had it in a folder.
Girl, yeah, I know. Yeah, okay.
Can I just say something just so that everyone heard the city manager say that we're waiting to hear back from St. Louis County so that we can have a discussion regarding the Hereford and Chambers
Roundabout.
and the roundabout. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I just want to make sure everybody heard that.
We reached out to them. And, I just haven't heard back. and so-
Okay. I'm requesting a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved, Heather Robinette.
Second, Aquita Noah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Eyes have it. We did great work, people. We did great work. We did great work.
Thank
But
We
you.
cleared up a lot of bills that was
It was,
hanging.
well, this, I want to,